As far back as 2005, we made the point that in South Africa in particular, when they spoke of, let's say for argument's sake, 10 million cell phone users, they were really talking about cell phone accounts. And the real number was about 8 million users. At that stage, we measured about 20% overcount based on the fact that many people had multiple accounts. And as the cell phone user base gets bigger, the proportion of double use, in other words, overcounting the number of users, grows. So today we have a situation in South Africa, for example, where penetration is 140%. And it was only when the market passed the 100% mark that we realized, or at least that the market realized, that they couldn't possibly be talking about users. They had to be talking about connections. And that's when the networks also began talking more about connections than users. So if you have 140% penetration and you only have 80% actual population using a cell phone, then clearly you have a 60% gap between use and penetration. And that's massive. In South Africa in particular, marketers have to understand that the market is not as big as it's made out to be. And if you start at let's say, 70 million users and you segment your market from there, then you end up with a far bigger addressable user base than you really have. Whereas if you start at 40 million and begin segmenting from there, you get closer to a real number. Across Africa, the issue is that we're now talking about having something like 700 million users in Africa. And for the first time, those stats are going with the proviso that it actually only represents about 500 million users versus 700 million subscribers. Now, the last time stats were released, when Africa passed the 500 million mark for the first time, we tried to temper the excitement about it and made the point that it's probably less than 400 million actual users rather than connections. But finally, the penny is dropping and the message is getting through. Mobile certainly is the biggest channel. There's no question that where you have 500 million users of a particular channel, that has the potential to be a silver bullet. But it also has to be made clear it's not the only mechanism. And for the great example of a more powerful channel, if you're not talking about one-on-one communication, but rather getting a mass marketing message out there, is FM radio. So I keep reminding my audiences not to forget that FM radio remains the most pervasive communications tool across Africa. So combine FM with mobile and you have a fairly powerful combination. But of course, in all respects, you always have to segment your market and see what proportion of your market is actually the addressable user base. I don't believe that as such, but at the bottom end of the market, those are the only features people want. They want voice, SMS, and FM radio. And in fact, the cheapest phone in the world today is a $6 phone that has exactly those three features. And the irony is that a brand like BlackBerry, which is the dominant smartphone brand across Africa, had to introduce a phone, the 9320, that also has FM radio along with all the apps. So yes, the apps are necessary. But if you don't have FM radio, you're losing out to a 50 Rand phone from ZTE.